Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the July 9th Glendale Civil Service Commission meeting. Mr. Kwan, may I please have roll call?
Yes. Commissioner McGrabian,
Here.
Commissioner Jihanian,
Here.
Commissioner Reen,
Here.
Commissioner Naravian,
Here.
Chair Hatamian.
Here. Mr. Kwan, next item, please.
Minutes, consideration for the minutes of June 11th, 2025.
Move to approve?
Second.
May I please have roll call?
Commissioner McGrabian,
Yes.
Commissioner Jihanian,
Yes.
Commissioner Reen,
Yes.
Commissioner Naravian,
Yes.
Chair Hatamian.
Yes. The next item, I will pass it on to our city attorney.
Thank you very much, Chair Hatamian, and good evening, members of the Civil Service Commission. My name is Yvette Nukian from the Glendale City Attorney's Office. I'm filling in for my colleague, Lucy Varpetian. I just wanted to make a quick announcement that Ms. Adams will be, and staff will be asking to move item number 11 out of order to be the new number 4, directly after oral communications. And staff will also be requesting that items 7 and 8 be taken off of the agenda and not heard, and renoticed and re-agendized for a later date to be determined later. And that was it. Happy to be here. Thank you.
Any quick questions, commissioners? I see none. May I please have the next item, Mr. Kwan?
Yes, oral communications. I do not have any cards, nor do we have any phone calls on the line.
Thank you. Next item.
Civil Service Commission staff comments.
Any comments from our fellow commissioners?
I have a comment.
Yes, Ms. Adams, please.
Yes, Mr. Chair and members of the commission, I am pleased to formally announce the recent appointments of 3 department heads and leaders on our executive team. The city manager has appointed Jack Liang as its new finance director. Jack is a seasoned public finance leader with nearly 20 years of experience in local government and brings a strong track record of strategic financial leadership, innovation, and commitment to public service. Jack most recently served as Chief Business Operations Officer at Clean Water Services in Oregon, as one of the state's largest public utilities. In that role, he served as a key advisor to the CEO, leading long-term financial planning, capital investment, strategy, and business development. He also previously held the role of Chief Financial Officer for Washington County, Oregon, where he oversaw a $1.5 billion budget and a $1 billion investment portfolio. The city manager has also appointed Jeff Brooks as its fire chief for Glendale Fire Department. With over 2 decades of distinguished service, Jeff Brooks brings extensive experience, community commitment, and visionary leadership to the role. Chief Brooks has served as the acting fire chief since March 1st, 2025, leading all divisions of the department and ensuring operational continuity and accountability. His promotion to fire chief follows a rigorous, intensive internal process and reflects the city's confidence in his leadership and strategic direction. Throughout his 20-year career with the Glendale Fire Department, Chief Brooks has held several key positions, including Deputy Fire Chief, Battalion Chief, Training Captain, and Fire Captain Paramedic. Third, the city manager has appointed Scott Mellon as the new General Manager for Glendale Water and Power. With more than two decades of engineering and utility experience, Scott brings a forward-thinking vision and a deep technical expertise to this critical leadership role. Scott joined Glendale Water and Power in September of 2022 as the Assistant General Manager of GWP's Power Management section. In this role, he oversaw utility-scale energy projects, managed renewable energy contract negotiations, and led efforts to support grid stability through advanced technologies. Prior to his tenure in Glendale, Scott spent over 20 years at Burbank Water and Power. He served as the principal electrical engineer in Burbank and project manager, and led the implementation of an advanced distribution management system. All three executives are here, and I would like to ask the commission to join me in welcoming them to their new executive leadership roles.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. I hope when the day comes when I apply for my next promotion, you give such an introduction about me. She does such a wonderful job. Fellow commissioners, any questions for Ms. Adams before I call up the newly appointed directors? None. Okay, Mr. Lang, we'll start with you. If you don't mind approaching the podium.
I don't mind at all. Good afternoon.
Welcome to Glendale.
Thank you very much.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, but what do you know about our community?
Well, I did my fair share of research before I joined Glendale, and I know that Glendale is one of the more diverse communities in the LA County. From my research, it seems to be a community that is really focused on the well-being of our community members, as well as trying to uphold our traditional values and continue the great culture that has always been here in Glendale. Stepping into the finance director's role, I have much to learn from Ms. Adams, the whole HR team, as well as the Civil Service Commission. Finance department being one of the closest partners with the HR department, I look forward to much collaboration opportunities with HR and with the Civil Service Commission. So I do
you,
look
Mr.
forward to
Lang.
our collaborations.
Thank you so much. Welcome. We're
you.
very happy
Welcome.
to have you.
Thank you very much.
I might come visit you to help me balance my checkbook sometime.
I'd be happy to help in any way I can.
I think he's going to be a little busy.
Welcome aboard. I actually did read up on you today. You were mentioned in the Glendale News Press,
Yes.
and it was a very interesting article. You do bring a lot of diversity to this city, so we appreciate that. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Any questions from my fellow commissioners for Mr. Lang?
I was just going to welcome you to the city, sir, and happy to sit down with you to chat about Glendale sometime. I actually do a lot of business in Washington County, Oregon. My company's based out of Tualatin. So I'd love to pick your brain on Oregon and happy to sit down and chat about Glendale.
I would love to connect sometimes. Thank you.
I'm also happy to talk about nature with you because as you came from Oregon, I hope you enjoyed nature. And I love enjoying nature around us. So if you're ever interested in talking nature
Absolutely.
or anything else, I'm here. I've also lived in Glendale for many years. I grew up
Very nice.
here.
Very
I
nice.
left and came back. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to be here for you.
Thank you. My last employer and organization was very focused on environmental conservation, so I'd be happy to have a conversation anytime. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Welcome.
Just
Thank you.
welcome, yeah.
As you see, we have a very diverse panel of commissioners, business folks, nature
Absolutely.
folks, people who need help balancing their checkbook. Oh, welcome. We're
Thank you.
very happy to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I would like to call our newly appointed chief, Mr. Brooks. Chief Brooks, please.
Good evening, Chair Hatami and members of the commission. Ms. Adams, thank you for that very wordy and lengthy introduction for all of us. I can only imagine how fun that is having to read all that. Honored to be with you tonight and see you all again.
As we say, it was long overdue and well-deserved, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Any questions for our chief, newly appointed chief? From my fellow
Well, I've just had some opportunities to get to know you a little bit better, and I am so excited to have you lead our fire department and welcome officially.
Thank you. Thank you.
Just congratulations. on
Thank
the
you, sir.
promotion.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you. We appreciate all the work you do, so thank you.
Thank you, Chief
Thank you.
Brooks. Thank you for being here. Next, I would like to call Mr. Scott Mellon to the podium. How are you, Mr. Mellon? Welcome.
I'm doing quite well. How are you?
So from the city of Burbank, huh?
Well, yes, we all have to come from somewhere.
Okay. I like that answer.
Originally, I grew up in Glendale. I spent the first 10 years of my life here, and then eventually went to live in Burbank, and I now live in Simi Valley. But I started my career in aerospace, and then moved into utility world, Burbank, and now I'm here. Very happy to be here.
Very nice. So you have some roots here in Glendale. Did you go to schooling around here too, or was it mainly in Burbank?
No, I ended up, so my father, he went to school here in Glendale. It's a Catholic school at the time, Incarnation, I think is what it was. And then after that, I went into Burbank for school, and I ended up following his footsteps and my mother's footsteps through grade school and high school. I went to Bell Jeff for high school there in Burbank.
Got it. Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Mellon?
I don't have a question, just a little funny joke. I live very close to Burbank, and sometimes you don't know you're in Burbank until you see the green signs on the street and say, whoops, I went too far. So it's so nice to have you from next door, and we're very excited to have you here. And especially since you have your roots here, it's not going to, it's already, you're also already acclimated, so it's not that you're
Absolutely.
completely new. So it's nice
Very-
to have you here.
Very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions?
No, it's good to see us moving up.
I know, that's great. That's great. I was going to ask, when can we see a break on our water bill? But it's too soon. I'll ask later.
We'll talk about that later.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mellon, for being here. Welcome
Thank you.
aboard. All righty, Mr. Quank. May I please get the next item?
Recruitment and examination report.
Thank you. Ms. Adams?
Yes, Mr. Chair and members of the commission, this is the regular recruitment and examination status report, which represents the current recruitments in process and that our team is working on. You'll notice that our team has 30 open recruitments, and the report identifies the division of work and the various stages of the examination and selection process. If the commission has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, this is a note and file item.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Any questions? I see none. Thank you, Ms. Adams. May I please get the next item, Mr. Kwan?
Eligible lists established.
Ms. Adams?
Yes, Mr. Chair and members of the commission, the subject before you is the regular report that includes all of the eligible lists that were recently established since our last meeting in June. The report includes the total number of applicants and the number of individuals that advanced through the various stages of the examination process. Since our last meeting, we have had a total of 8 lists that were established. 5 were open to the public, 1 was given on a promotional basis, and 2 were given on an open and promotional basis. This is also a note and file item. However, if the commission has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Ms. Adams, I do have one question regarding the 8 lists that were established in relation to the hiring freeze that the city had implemented. Did these 8 lists come before the hiring freeze or post, and is it being used?
Well, they're not being used yet, but the hiring freeze went into effect on April 23rd. Examination processes that were approved to begin prior to the freeze were allowed to finish. Additionally, positions that were approved to be filled prior to April 23rd are still approved to be filled. After April 23rd, things changed, and so you will see that we will more likely than not establish fewer lists going forward.
That was actually my next question. If we were going to create another, if it would be appropriate to have another line down here that may explain that some of the established lists were pre the April 23rd date. But I guess as we move forward, like you said, there's going to be fewer lists.
There was a finite amount that was approved prior to April 23rd. We'll finish those up. If you can recall, when I mentioned the hiring freeze at our last meeting, I said that there were 2 exclusions to that, or 3. One being intermittent seasonal hiring for our parks and summer programs. That will continue. Police officer hiring will continue, and positions that are within the Glendale Water and Power Department and enterprise department, those will continue. So those are excluded from the hiring freeze. Everything else, if a department head would want to have something reconsidered, there is a process that the city manager has established through this freeze, and the department head would have to go through that process, get an approval to unfreeze something, and then be allowed to continue.
Very good. And when you say police, do you mean sworn or do you mean just police department? Does that include also fire?
I'm talking about Glendale Police Department. I'm talking about a couple of positions in Glendale Fire, ambulance operators. There's a position that we came to you about before the freeze. It was a civilian emergency manager. We asked about that a couple of meetings ago, so that will continue. And there may be one other that is going through the unfreeze application process now. So just a couple in fire. In the police department, we have some civilian personnel who are in parking enforcement. We will continue to fill those positions. And we have a number of police officer vacancies that we will continue filling those. Anything else will have to go through the unfreeze process, but my recollection is telling me there are not too many other vacancies within Glendale Police other than what I've mentioned on the record today.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Any questions from my fellow commissioners?
If I could just, the unfreeze process, could you tell us a little bit more what that involves? How does that work if there's an unfreeze request?
So there's a form that the city created for this process where the department head and his team must identify the justification to have the position unfrozen. They must identify the funding source. So how is the position going to be paid for? Is it through savings from somewhere else in the general fund, an enterprise fund, a grant? So they have to identify its funding. So they prepare that package. It goes to our budget department first, who confirms whatever the funding that's articulated is actually accurate. Then it comes to HR, where we determine if the position is actually vacant, if it's in our position control, if the justification for it being unfrozen makes sense from our perspective. We look to see if there's a list in place, if we can move forward with filling the position quickly and that sort of thing. Once it leaves HR, it goes to the city manager for his complete review and his ultimate decision.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Any other questions? I see none. Next item, Mr. Kwan.
Job bulletin for approval, Police Sergeant.
Thank you, Ms. Adams.
Yes, Mr. Chair and members of the commission, before you for approval is the proposed job bulletin for the position of police sergeant. As this is a sworn promotional recruitment within the police department, Civil Service Rule 4, Section 3C requires commission approval prior to posting. The bulletin is largely consistent with the existing class specification for police sergeant. However, the police department has requested the addition of a related bachelor's degree as a highly desirable qualification. This change is intended to reflect the department's emphasis on continued professional development. We've also updated the minimum education requirement to reflect a high school diploma, which aligns with the Commission's recent direction regarding educational standards across job classifications. The selection process mirrors the structure used during the last promotional recruitment and will include a written exam, a professional panel interview, and a promotability assessment interview. If approved, the bulletin will be posted from July 14th through July 25th, and the corresponding examinations are tentatively scheduled for August and September as outlined in the job bulletin. Additionally, at the request of the Police Department and in accordance with Civil Service Rule 4, Section 17, the eligible list that results from this recruitment will remain active for 1 year. Finally, the Glendale Police Officers Association has reviewed the job bulletin and has not raised any concerns. So we respectfully request that the commission approve the job bulletin for police sergeant as submitted. We have our senior human resources analyst, Russ Kwan, here, along with Captain Robert William, who will answer any questions if you have them.
Do we have any questions?
I do.
Please, Commissioner McGravian.
I don't know if this is for Mr. Kwan or Captain Williams, but I'll ask my question and then we'll take it from there. As I understand it, we made the bachelor's degree in a related field highly desirable. By adding that line item, I think that the previous line item where the 60 college semester units, an AA or an AS degree is preferred, it just looks confusing. One line item is preferred, the other one is highly desirable. It's really confusing which one comes first. Which one do we want more? I don't know. I just think that the language of preferred and highly desirable make it a little bit confusing. I would recommend having the AA and AS be almost required or desirable and the other one's highly desirable, or it's just together they feel weird to me just reading it.
Yeah, I'll let Mr. Kwan speak to that.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commissioner McGravian. So the reason why we listed both, why we listed the high school diploma, the intermediate post-certificate, and the 60 college semester units, AA or AS degree preferred, is because that's actually listed in the class specification as the minimum requirements. Although the AS, the college units and the, actually I take that back, the AS or AA is preferred. We can go ahead and change the language to make it less confusing, but the purpose behind having all of them listed was because we were reflective of the class specification, which was approved by commission, but then also wanted to honor the request of the police department by including the bachelor's degree language so that it can encourage professional development.
And I really love that addition of the bachelor's degree. It's just that when you already have the preferred language, by adding the next one, that's where it becomes a little bit problematic. So I'm not sure if my fellow commissioners have any suggestions on, or if you agree with me, even maybe you don't.
I understand your point, Commissioner McGravian. I just have a question just so I can support your point. Did we in the past have a separate heading for desirables, or was it always kind of coupled into the minimum requirements? Because typically you'll have your minimum requirements and everything will be listed under that heading. And then any desirables are under a separate heading.
We did not.
Okay.
We only began to use the terminology highly desirable around the time you joined the commission. So we did not have a separate category for that. So hearing that feedback, we can take that feedback and incorporate it. But before, we were not using that terminology at all.
Would that address your concerns, Commissioner McGravian?
No.
If it was separated out?
No, because the word preferred and highly desirable, whether you put it in different headings or together, don't go together. They create confusion, and if one person is hired, another person is not hired, it opens up potential for liability, and for someone saying that I have disparate treatment. If we're saying, I heard twice that the AA degree is a requirement, it's not, it's preferred. The language is preference, not a requirement.
So if you have the headings, I think what it'll do, it'll kind of force the author to be a little bit more concise. So preferred does create confusion, because if you have a minimum requirement and you say 60 college semester units, AA or AS degree, you're not going to use the
That's
word preferred anymore. It's going to be a minimum requirement.
Exactly,
It's not
that's
a
the thing.
preference. It's you either need it to qualify or you don't. And if you don't need it, if that's the case, then it goes under a desirable.
So here's the thing. Preference is, I want this most. A desire is, I'd like this. But when you add the word highly desirable, then it's fighting with the word preference. And I know I'm going into semantics, but I have had to have so many lawsuits that I litigate that are ridiculous and for no reason at all, that's when I come to you and say, it's too confusing. It opens up an opportunity of a disgruntled person who's not hired to come and use that small little thing, and an attorney who says, why not just, make a big deal out of it? And now we have a lawsuit because preferred and highly desirable are kind of going against each other.
Commissioner.
I have a slight, I appreciate the chair's comments and Commissioner McGrabian's comments. Substantively, I understand them and they make sense. But where I stand is, I think the procedure here is a bulletin. We have a class specification, and my procedure preference is that a bulletin should match the classification exactly. And so this bulletin will come and go. I think it's clear enough that more education is better. So in this particular instance, I don't think there's going to be any lawsuit or issue of liability, because you have an AA, that's great. We prefer that. You have a bachelor, that's obviously better. So I think we should, just on a procedural matter, I just think with bulletins, I'm inclined to just say, let's keep it as close as we can. And obviously the department wants to add the bachelors, and so I favor that.
Of course,
Even though it's a
more
variance
education is
from
always.
the classification, so.
I highly approve. I'm just saying, by adding something new when you already had the word preference, they don't go together as smoothly.
Yeah, and on my end, I mean, I look at job bulletins daily because we do look at grievances before they become lawsuits. And typically they'll have minimum requirements, which are very clear that this is the bare minimum you need in order for you to qualify, right, for the examination, whether there's testing involved or an interview, whatever the exam is, right? And then the desirables, it's a separate category, which is like that added thing that an employee may possess. And if those desirables are however many years doing field patrol or whatever it is that the department desires, that's an addition to the minimum requirements, then it's very clear to an applicant that, okay, I meet the minimum requirements, I can apply. And then the desirables are almost like icing on the cake, right? Those are the real good candidates that come in and may hit all of the desirables. But let's say if somebody who doesn't qualify and the minimum requirements are not clear, right? For whatever reason, there's ambiguity because there's verbiage like preferred. Then it does create an issue because the employee or the candidate can come in and say, well, I didn't really understand if the word preferred meant minimum requirement or if it's just merely desirable. But it's presumed that the BA is a desirable, but is the AA and AS also a desirable, or is it a minimum requirement?
So
if that makes sense.
for this specific job bulletin, we must keep high school diploma,
Okay.
intermediate post, and 60 college semester units, AA or AS degree preferred, because that is what is on the class specification right now.
Okay.
We can either have the job bulletin approved with the bachelor's degree language, or we can have it removed. But to change any of the first three items, we cannot. That is what is on the class spec, so that must be on the bulletin.
Okay. So if you have a candidate that calls in to get information on this job bulletin, so it gets posted and they have a question and they call in and they say, I don't have the 60 college semester units and it's a preferred. Are we saying preferred is the same as a desirable, or are we saying that it's a minimum requirement? That's the part that I'm trying to clear up.
So this is police sergeant these applicants will be coming from within the city of Glendale. So this would be someone who is already working with us. And for promotional opportunities within the Glendale Police Department, Police Chief Sid and his team, they have, I'm calling it an academy, but an information session, if you will, where they go through what almost every word means on this job bulletin. They answer all questions of anyone who's thinking about applying, knows they're going to apply, applied in the past and was either successful or not. So they clear up all confusion in the informational session prior to this bulletin even being released. They go through the calendar going forward in terms of testing, when the list is going to be coming out, the length of the list. So they answer all those questions up front to minimize the confusion. But in your case, with your question, if an applicant were to call HR, we would simply stay consistent with the messaging that the police chief has already given to the people who are already working within his police force.
The way I read this is that the high school diploma was a requirement and the AA degree and everything on that second line was a preference. You could have used highly desirable or preferable, whatever you want. But now we're adding a second preference and calling it highly desirable. So I still look at this as one high school diploma or equivalent required and everything else is preferred or desired.
I had a question also. Does the post certificate require the 60 units or not? Or is that separate?
I don't know the answer to that question.
My question was, does the post certificate require the 60 college semester units?
Good evening. No, it does not. The intermediate post is based on a number of years of service that you have.
Okay.
Once you hit those years, then you start off with a basic certificate, then you go to intermediate. But 60 units is not counted towards.
So the 60 units of college credit is not a requirement to apply for this position, correct?
Correct.
And the preferred for the 60 college semester units, it's essentially not a minimum requirement.
That's correct. And to kind of just point out something else in here, under the notes section, it says an equivalent combination of experience, education, and/or training may be considered as a substitute for the minimum requirements. And that is something sometimes that, going back to what Ms. Adams brought up, is when the chief of police does meet with individuals, we do have sometimes candidates who may be a class or two short from hitting that requirement, but we understand that they're in a college program or obtaining their education and they're maybe a few months behind. Those are the times that we make those considerations.
Thank you. And I guess, looking on page 7, because it's under minimum requirements, although it's not a minimum requirement, is why I posed my original question to the commission, whether or not, and this is common for job bulletins, to have a section that says desirables. So these two, the bachelor's degree and the 60 college or semester units are not a minimum requirement. They are a desirable requirement. They're preferred.
Correct.
And hence, if you turn to page 7, the heading reads minimum requirements. That's the main heading for all these other subheadings.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, just a point of clarification with regards to the qualifications. The 60 college semester units is a requirement. However, the AA or AS degree is preferred. So, there's a semicolon in between the
Can we move that to
college
another
units and AA.
Okay.
Oh,
Can we
that's,
move the AA or AS to a new line so that's clear?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay.
I guess it goes towards the, the probing and the looking. It's good to look at these and kind of, my thing is just to make sure that the applicant who's looking at this is clear what's a minimum requirement and what's a desirable. And so even if you're going to say preferred and you have it under the heading of minimum requirement, you can always argue it to the applicant and say, hey, it's under the subheading of minimum requirement, although it contains the language that we must maintain, which is in the class specs for it to say preferred. And that's why the bachelor's degree I think would be more appropriate if it had its own heading for desirable. And it would also give a lot of leverage to the department to add additional desirables that you may want to further clarify to the applicant as to the additional qualities that you look for in an applicant that may not be a minimum requirement. It's a great tool for the hiring managers to use. Where I work, we employ it all the time because it provides that additional qualities that you're looking for that an applicant may have.
What kinds of examples would you put in a desirable section?
So the education is great, but if, for example, law enforcement at the sheriff's, if there's different types of assignments that you're looking for a sergeant to have, so sheriffs were very diversified, but let's say Glendale PD, if you wanted them to have worked in different units, then you can put it under a desirable. I noticed that under knowledge and skill, you have labor and management relations, which is great, which is like dealing with the unions. I don't know if that's a minimum requirement or if that's a desirable, and that will depend on, the job specs. But it definitely allows the hiring manager to separate these things out and say, this is the bare minimum you need to have in order for you to qualify for this exam. These are the desirables. These are the things that really will top the candidates. And then when you make your selection, the person who has the desirables and gets the position, you're even more justified in your appointment because that person has worked a variety of different assignments, has labor relations experience, etc. So I would like to make a motion.
Well,
So,
before
Commissioner,
we-
please.
Okay. Before we move to the motion, reviewing our rules and our city charter, we, the commission, control the examination process. And so I have a series of questions about the examination process for this position, which involves two different panels. And in studying this last time, it came up briefly, but I'm like, I don't really know anything about the examination process involved other than what's stated. And so I hope the staff and Captain Williams will indulge me with just a few questions. I jotted down questions like all the things I don't know, which vastly exceeded what I do know. So with the chair's permission, I'd like to kind of run through it. Starting with the professional panel review. What it says in the bulletin is that the professional panel will consist of police and management professionals from other jurisdictions. So I was wondering, okay, how many people are in these panels? And are all the panels always the same number of people? Does it change?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, Russ Kwan, Senior HR Analyst. So with regards to the professional panel, by practice, and based off of our best practices within HR, we do tend to set our panels or aim to get anywhere between 3 to 5 panelists on our panels from neighboring agencies. The way that we do that is we go ahead and we send out requests for assistance for interview panels, and depending on the number of responses we get, and that'll help to determine the size of our panel.
Is it a formal notice or an email, or how does that work?
It is a formal notice that gets initiated from our office. We have a staff member that is one of her primary duties is to reach out to other agencies to get neighboring cities to send us essentially evaluators.
So I assume we might send that kind of notice to Pasadena, to Burbank, LA Sheriff, maybe?
That is correct.
Okay.
Amongst other cities within the region.
So do we try to mix it up and have different personnel on our panels from time to time, or do we have a list of solid panel members that we call on over and over again?
Well, over time, people do tend to promote, and tend to retire, and so we can't always rely on a stable pool of raters. And so often what we'll do is we will just go ahead and send out the rater request to the neighboring cities, and based on the responses, we will take a look between human resources and department management to see which organizations best fit us for the particular recruitment, and then we'll determine it that way who's going to participate on the panel.
So would 5 be better than 3?
In an ideal situation, yes, because and in this case, we are talking about police sergeant. The law enforcement world is a very, very, very small world. So the chances of having a candidate have a potential conflict of interest, being personal friends with the other law enforcement members from another city are high. I'm not going to lie to that. It's a high probability.
What would the nature of the conflict be? I mean, they encounter each other professionally, perhaps, but
Well, if they're personal friends, if they are neighbors, if they have gone, if they've participated on, let's say, professional panels together to the point that they've become close acquaintances.
okay. And we do
Times
have
a
a
person may know someone and may not want them to evaluate them. They may be next door neighbors and they may prefer to have that person step off of their interview panel.
I had a case where my opposing counsel was the next door neighbor of the judge in the case, but they stuck with it. Anyway, if there's somewhere I think it's in the rules, there's a conflict of interest statement that's required. Are we vigilant about making sure that before the examination process starts, that everybody not only they understand that, but they also sign a statement indicating that there's not a conflict of interest?
Yes, we do that.
Yes, that is correct. At the beginning of each interview process, we do, before we even approach the interview questions, we do go around the room and make sure that all the raters review their schedule of candidates to see if they know anybody to the point that either they or the candidates could possibly feel uncomfortable in having them sit on the panel.
Right, that's great.
And I believe if there is a higher ranking vacancy, that the city attempts to get a panel of 5. Because if I'm not mistaken, for the chief position, because I knew of somebody at the sheriff's department that was approached to be on the panel, and they were looking for 5 people, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Kwan.
Yeah, I mean, with higher profile recruitments, it does give us more perspective. So to that extent, yes, we would like the more perspectives we can get, the better.
Okay, so we've got a panel selected. We've sent out notifications, and they're ready to go. They've done a conflict waiver. So there are questions that are going to be asked. Are these questions are the same questions asked to every candidate, or do they vary?
No, we ask the candidates the same questions, but for each examination cycle, we don't ask the same questions.
Great.
We come up with new questions for each testing cycle. But we ask the candidates the same question. Now, if the answer elicits a specific follow-up, then we may follow up on a specific answer from that candidate, but the questions asked are the same of everyone.
Right, and with the police position, it's technical, right? I couldn't write questions for that position, no way, right? So you need somebody that knows post and all the requirements, and so who is it that sits down and it has to change each time, otherwise somebody could look at the questions from last time, oh, these are the questions, right? That's no good. So who writes these questions? And
we always have a collaborative process with the chief of police or his designee, and myself as the chief HRO or my designee. We always collaborate and we work together on the questions. We identify what answers we would believe would be most appropriate for the questions that we are asking, and then we do some sort of internal validation to make sure that what we're asking and what the answers are connected to the criteria that we're seeking through the process.
so it's HR and police work together to make these questions.
Always.
Right.
And we do keep a record of what prior questions were asked so that we're not asking the same questions, because sometimes we do get the same candidates who were not successful in the first process and may come back to us, in this case, maybe 6 months later. So we certainly are careful not to ask the same questions again.
Right. So how long do we keep the prior questions on file in the city?
That's a good question. I think, I don't know if there's a written rule of how long we keep it on file. Generally, we have an examination once a year. In this case, since the last promotional process, which was about 6 months ago, we only had 6 successful candidates and all 6 of them promoted, which is why I'm back here in less than 1 year going through the same process again. But typically, every year when we do this process, we kind of look at all the questions that are out there. As Ms. Adams suggested, the chief of police and HR will look at questions collaboratively. Sometimes there are questions that are completely outdated based on case law or certain trends that are coming up. So we may change up some questions to make it more relevant to today's society and policing and what may be happening in a law enforcement career.
That sounds perfect. So when the examination starts, is one person reading each question?
No, it recycles through the rating panel. So if there are 5, we will determine before the process starts who's going to ask question 1, who will ask question 2, 3, 4, and 5, or whatever the number is. So each person on the rating panel will know what questions they're going to ask beforehand.
But it's just verbatim because the questions are prepared in advance. It's not ad hoc.
Right.
Yeah. So how does the grading work? Each member of the panel makes their own separate numerical grade?
Correct. So each panelist has a scoring sheet. Each individual will basically score the individual based on their own knowledge and experience and opinions on how the question was answered. Once the candidate has completed the interview and has stepped out of the room, then the panelists will have a discussion to make sure that everybody's to some extent on the same page so that we don't have a big gap or if we miss something. Sometimes you may be interviewing 7, 8, sometimes 10 individuals in one day. So you want to make sure that there's some consistency in the note taking and that the candidates didn't miss something that was said. So there is a lot of conversation that takes place, a debrief, if you will, once the candidate leaves the room.
And so you try to reach consensus as to the score on each question?
Correct.
So it's not an average of maybe people differ?
Not exactly consensus because people have different opinions, but there is a rubric that is prepared in advance to kind of guide the raters through their thinking around certain topics. So you don't have to have the exact same score, but you have to be in a range of agreement.
You don't want the finance department involved in running the numbers, right? Definitely not. Okay, and there's a recording of this, right? So is that with a tape recorder or how does that happen?
Commissioner Reen, yes, we do record all of our interviews, and that wouldn't just be limited to police sergeant, but to all of our oral interview processes. And we use a digital recorder, and each of the recordings are saved onto the human resources computer system.
So how long do you keep them?
By rule, we're supposed to only keep them for 30 days, but in general, I would say we keep them for a little over a year.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for providing a tutorial for me who didn't know any of that. I really appreciate it, and your time and knowledge and skill in this.
The rating sheets are really interesting to read if you ever get to read promotional files. They're very interesting to see and read.
I'm going to nominate Commissioner Reen when he retires to be on the panel because I think he shows such a keen interest. I think he will do an amazing job. My question is, as to the panel interview, how much weight is that given by the chief when he's making his final selection? I know it's not the final decision. How much weight do you folks give that panel interview?
So each panel has a separate weighted. I believe the professional panel is 50%, the written examination is 20%, and then the promotability panel is 30%. And then once all those scores are combined together, then we'll have an eligibility list, and then the chief of police will interview the top 3 candidates for based on their scores.
Very good. Any other questions? Yes.
Just a couple questions. One structural question: is this position a new position, or is it to backfill like a retirement? Or I know we supported a lieutenant position in the last meeting.
It's not a new position. It's to backfill vacancies. So as you recall, I was here last month for the lieutenant promotional process. We anticipate once we promote lieutenants, then we'll have vacancies for sergeants.
Right. And then in the job bulletin, it says the position would serve as the department's public information officer. Is that like boilerplate language, or would this particular sergeant be the PIO?
We do have a a sergeant that is assigned to be the official public information officer for the department. But there are times in the middle of the night where, just last night, we had a significant traffic collision in the middle of the night, and the media may reach out to the police department, and our sergeants who are on duty are expected to have some level of experience or at least some level of knowledge to speak to the media with some preliminary information. So we do list that as one of the duties. However, it's not the primary job of that supervisor.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other questions before I make my motion? Yes, please.
I'm still confused about the degree preferred part and highly desirable. Like, what's the difference? Is there defined somewhere? I mean, when you're reading them, both sound like they're both the same almost.
There's not an official definition, and the 60 college semester units is what the requirement is. But Glendale Police Department is a strong advocate for continuing education, and they want to represent to the applicant pool that the higher level of education you achieve, the better it is for the long-term career, and that's the culture that they want to grow within the Glendale Police Department.
Why do they prefer AA or AS if the person already has 60 units anyway? Is there a reason for that?
The reason is having the 60 units and completing something that gives you an actual degree for your file is viewed slightly differently.
Okay.
Commissioner McGarry.
As I understand it, the only reason this position's in front of us is to add the highly desired college degree, correct?
No.
Oh, and then the other blue things, right? Or as far as the, right, but as so what I heard before was we can't touch the AA degree because it's already approved, but we can approve the highly desirable college degree and say yes or no to it, but we can't say yes or no or strike the AA degree part.
Right. You can make a motion to remove the bachelor's degree language and approve everything else. The language that's already contained within the class specification must be on the bulletin.
That I did not know, and that clarification makes a big difference.
Yeah, so the class specification is negotiated with the unions as to what the class specs are for that position. So that's already predetermined, agreed upon by the department, the city, and the union entities. And hence, that's the reason why that's part of the language. But I do think that if we do break this down and fine tune it, which is very common, again, it's gonna be a lot more clear as to the minimum requirements versus desirables. Because when you have the word preferred, even if it's part of a class specs, my recommendation is whoever's gonna do the labor relations next time around, to take that term out. If it's the desire of the department for that to be a minimum requirement, then that's something that should be negotiated with the union when the contracts come up again, just to kind of take that out. Because it does create confusion, and I think the way that we can address it is to have that additional section that's a desirable, and with the direction that, Mr. Kwan and the department go through the job bulletin pertaining to the experience section, education, licenses, knowledge, skill, and abilities, and determine what is a desirable and what is a minimum requirement. And most of it will be guided by the class specs as your minimum requirements. And that way the commission can say, okay, well, bachelor's, yes, that's a great idea. Yes, we prefer that to be a desirable. So my motion is to add an additional section for a desirable section, and move all the different prongs that is a desirable under that section. And regardless of the language, it's going to be clear to the reader that an AS degree, even if it does say preferred, it's under the heading of a minimum requirement. You're not going to have a future issue with an applicant that's going to say, that was confusing to me. It was listed under the minimum requirement, but you stated that it was preferred. Which one is it? Right? And I understand that it's in the class specs, but that also raises the question of, in the future, being able to clean that up a little bit in the class specs.
Mr. Chair, may I ask just a point of clarification? So the motion would be to keep the bulletin as is, but then create like a line break where after the semicolon, where it says AA, and then make a new heading that said desirable, and then list AA or AS degree, and then bachelor's degree, both of those underneath that heading, and that's the only change?
So the change would be, to be more specific, on page 7, you have a heading that says minimum requirement that's bolded. Because it's on page 7, it creates a confusion. That technically is gonna be above all these other subheadings that are underlined.
Until you get to other characteristics.
Exactly, so the desirables are gonna be its own separate heading, just similar to the minimum requirements. So you're gonna have your minimum requirements, and under your minimum requirements, you're gonna have your experience, education, licenses, knowledge, and abilities. However, you're gonna have a section, its own separate section, almost like the minimum requirements on page 7, that's gonna say desirable requirements.
Well, it's not going to say the
Sorry,
word requirement.
yeah, it's gonna be desirable experience. And then you can list whatever your desirables are gonna be underneath that.
As a
Because
point of-
because if you list it, as you stated, Commissioner Reen, you still have the same problem, because you're still under the heading of minimum requirements that's listed on page 7. That doesn't change. So the main heading is what's creating the confusion here. The main heading on page 7 says minimum requirements, but then when you read through, you have desirables.
As a point of order, is debate, there's been a motion from the chair, is debate allowed on this at this point?
You can absolutely,
Okay,
yes,
so I would,
please do.
I mean, respectfully, I disagree. Because I think that the class is what it is, the class specification is, and so we really should not be doing edits and rewrites. Now, on the substantive point, I get it, and in a perfect world, sure, we'd change it, but I think it's late in the game for this, and I think it's readily understandable by anybody making an application. Plus, everybody, as Ms. Adams pointed out, everybody. This is promotional. Everybody's been in the city, right? Everybody has experience here. So, if this is confusing, you're not sergeant material. So I would not support the chair. I understand and appreciate the chair's motion. I will not support it. I would support approving the bulletin as presented as it is.
Thank you, Commissioner Reen. So let me ask this of Mr. Kwan. Are there, and also the representative from Glendale Police Department, are there any other sections under experience, education, licenses, knowledge, skills, and abilities, ability 2, that are not minimum requirements?
So other than the bachelor degree, is there anything else that's not a minimum?
Anything
requirement?
else on page 8 and halfway through page 9 that's not a minimum requirement?
And to be clear, a minimum requirement is if you don't have this, the door is closed. You're gone.
Yes.
But everything else, you're still in. We're just going to mesh you in with everybody else and make sure that the best candidate is hired. Correct?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission. So the minimum requirements for this position are the 3 years experience as a current Glendale police officer, including 1 year in the assignment of field patrol officer, high school diploma or equivalent, intermediate post-certificate, and 60 college semester units.
Thank you. So everything else that's listed from 8 to 9, halfway through page 9, it is not a minimum requirement.
And also the valid Class C driver's license. That is a requirement.
Okay. We'll include that as a minimum requirement. But everything else that's listed is not a minimum requirement.
That is correct.
Okay. I believe Commissioner Reen's concern is the class specs. And sticking to specifically what the class specs say. Do the class specs, Mr. Kwan, specifically state the remaining additional sections that are not minimum requirements? Under minimum requirements?
Yes, I am looking at the minimum. I'm looking at the class specification now, and yes, they are all it falls under the same structure as shown on the bulletin.
Did a prior commission, I'm sorry to interrupt, did a prior commission approve the class spec?
Mr. Kwan can tell you the date that it was last approved. It should be,
This was last approved in October 2024. So, yes,
We approved it.
I remember we brought up the issue of the minimum requirements back then as well. And it was approved due to the need for the department to be able to fill that vacancy. However, there's comments on record in regards to providing additional clarification as to what is a minimum requirement and what is not. And I think as you read it, when you have a heading that says minimum requirements and you have a laundry list of minimum requirements, it can also have a chilling effect and sometimes discourage people from wanting to apply. I understand Commissioner Reen's comments as to if you don't understand it, then maybe you should not apply. But what we want to do in a governmental agency is be inclusive and transparent and forthright and as to what is a minimum requirement. So that's why I raised those concerns in the applicants understanding the bare minimum of what's needed for them to get banded or get approved for the exam, and everything else that's not a minimum requirement is a desirable. And so therefore the headings, if we're just copy pasting directly from the class specs, you know, at some point the city has to reconcile this because it doesn't flow like the way an ordinary governmental job bulletin would post
right.
to show what's a desirable and what's a minimum.
And we've heard that feedback, and we asked for additional time because in the class specification process, we're also changing its formatting to fit what the feedback that the commission has been giving us. And in changing that formatting, we are now meeting and conferring with the bargaining groups. So we're not yet at an exact point in time when we can bring back updated class specifications for this right now. We're getting closer, but we're not quite there yet. That doesn't mean that we haven't heard the feedback and we're not prepared to include it in our future class specification. Things are just not aligning up as rapidly as we would like, and Glendale Police Department has a need to backfill its vacancy. So it's not that staff is ignoring your feedback. We're working to get there.
So maybe a solution that addresses all of the issues and concerns that has been raised would be for us to approve the bulletin as it is stated here tonight, but also agendize this position so that next time it comes up, we've got it exactly how everybody likes it. So there's no ambiguities, no misunderstandings. So the bulletin goes forward as stated, consistent with the class spec that we approved before tonight. It's an idea.
I see both sides because our job here is a specific job, and we keep approving positions that we believe are unclear and ambiguous and not 100% effective because of the need of the city. And I completely understand, Ms. Adams, that what we're asking for is not just this position, but citywide. So that takes time. All of that I understand. And I do appreciate, Ms. Adams, that, you know, the comments that you are listening to the commission's comments, because our job here is to be transparent, is to have fair hiring, inclusive hiring, and not make it look like we are approving vague classifications and job postings so that we can hire whoever we want, because it's not clear. Clarity is very important. Having a candidate know exactly what's required and what's preferred. I mean, transparency and honesty and openness and clarity, that is so important in building trust. And when you have trust going forward, that's when you have a really good working relationship. And especially in a promotion, I know we keep saying this is a promotion, so it's less important. I respectfully disagree. A promotion is even more important because candidates can say, well, you've known me 7 years and you like that guy more than me. You show it because you're nicer to that person. You smile more when you say yes to that person. So you don't like me as much. It is so easy to have a candidate in an internal promotion believe that they were not chosen because the desirables were used a certain way. And so the clarity and the honesty and the transparency is so important for a job. So that's why I really appreciate that the department, the HR department, and the departments are working towards changing the ambiguity towards clarity.
Right, I think that if we can have this bulletin approved, that when you see the updated class specification and its format, it will be much more clear what is desired and what is required. Because while we start on the bottom of page 7 where it says minimum requirements, and we lead through experience, education, and everything listed beneath it, under the educational grouping is where we have two things that are not minimum requirements, and we've already addressed what those are. The words after the semicolon, 60 college semester units. The words after the semicolon are not minimum requirements. It's a preference and a desirable. The degree, the AS degree, and the bachelor's degree, that's not the requirement. The requirement is the 60 college semester units. However, everything else on this page, the license, I have to correct something that Mr. Kwan stated. The knowledge, skills, and abilities are minimum requirements. They are. In the new formatting, we do have a plan to pull out desirables and list them differently. And I think that all the parties within the Glendale Police Department and Human Resources, we have heard the feedback, and that's why Chief Sid and his team have come up with this informational session to make it crystal clear to the applicants what we're asking for, what they can expect, to clear up any ambiguity, and they have a lengthy Q&A so that the applicant pool is clear. And then we have a way to document that we gave the information to, just provide the clarity that you're asking for and that we want to give our applicant pool as well.
Thank you, Ms. Adams, for that.
Ms. Adams, if I can also add one more thing, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I also
please.
wanted to add, in addition to what Ms. Adams just said, the knowledge of, the skills and ability to, these are all things that as part of the process, when we do the written examination, the professional panel, the promotability panel, the questions are all designed to test these categories to make sure that the candidate is able to demonstrate that they do have the knowledge, the skill, the ability to.
Thank you. Thank you for that addition, and I thank you, Ms. Adams, for adding that additional section, knowledge, skills, and abilities to the minimum requirement. I want to commend this commission and everybody involved in this conversation because it definitely does show a lot of clarity as to the confusion, right? Some of us have HR backgrounds, some don't. We're professionals from different walks of life, and yet we're here trying to figure out which ones of these sections are minimum requirements. I always put myself in the applicant's shoes. I'm like, okay, if we're here having this discussion as to what's going to be a minimum requirement, how about the applicant? So there's that one thing. And because of my background of having been a professional in the law enforcement world, whether it was Pasadena Police Department or the sheriffs, sergeants play a critical role. They play one of the most instrumental roles. Yes, I would give the same attention if it was a captain position, but sergeants are right?
Of course.
Yeah.
First
They're-
line of supervision.
Yeah.
They're the first line of supervision. Anything goes wrong, that police officer, that deputy is looking for the sergeant. And is looking to get information from the sergeant. What do I do next? What's next? And so the sergeants play a critical role. And yeah, as you can see, they also step in for lieutenants. So, Ms. Adams, thank you for giving us your feedback. I will retrieve my motion, and I feel like we've made a full circle in entrusting the city and our HR unit to duly note our concerns. And it's, I think, at this point apparent that there needs to be some changes in this regard as we move forward. And as a commission, I think we've done our due diligence to take it to the next level, right? So thank you very much. Do I have a motion? Thank you.
I think Commissioner
I'm
Narabian
sorry,
had
Mr.
something to
Narabian,
say.
please add, please.
I was going to say, if there's an immediate need for these sergeants, I think, because most of us agree this is kind of confusing, right? But if there's an immediate need for these sergeants, we don't want to hold it up either, right?
Right.
Is
Absolutely.
there an immediate need?
Yes, sir, there is. We anticipate that promotions will occur soon after this process is completed.
So if we don't agree on this, then we're going to hold the city back from their sergeants. Is that correct?
That is correct, and we are also on notice of a few upcoming retirements that will be happening in other ranks within our police department, and we're trying to get prepared for all of that.
Okay.
Any other questions from my fellow commissioners? Do I have a motion?
Mayor, Mr. Chair, I would
Please.
move that the bulletin be approved, as stated.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Mr. Kwan, roll call, please.
Commissioner McGrabian,
Yes.
Commissioner Jihanian,
Yes.
Commissioner Reen,
Yes.
Commissioner Narabian,
Yes.
Chair Hatamian.
Yes. Next item, please.
Item number 7, class specification for approval, systems engineer series. Mr. Chair, if you recall, this item has been pulled.
Thank you, Mr. Kwan. Next item.
Number 8, class specification for approval, electrical mechanic supervisor 1. Mr. Chair, also this item has been pulled as well.
Thank you, Mr. Kwan. May I please get the next item?
Acting assignments.
Thank you. Ms. Adams.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, thank you for allowing me a few minutes to walk you through this item regarding delegated authority for acting assignments during the city's hiring freeze. As you are aware, the city has been under a formal hiring freeze since April 23rd, 2025, due to budgetary constraints. Since that time, recruitment activities have been significantly limited, with a few important exceptions as we earlier discussed. Police officer recruitments, positions within the Glendale Water and Power, and any positions that were already approved prior to the start of the freeze. On June 24th, 2025, the City Council adopted the fiscal year 25-26 budget, and at this point, we expect the hiring freeze to remain in place through the end of this fiscal year, which is June 30th, 2026. That said, it is possible that the freeze may extend beyond that date, depending upon future budget conditions. Now, while recruitment has paused, city operations have not. Departments are still expected to provide uninterrupted public service, and some departments are experiencing staffing shortages that cannot be addressed through the normal hiring process. So to manage these gaps, departments are relying more heavily on temporary acting assignments. That is, appointing qualified internal employees to fill critical roles using salary savings and adhering to MOU provisions regarding acting pay. So this brings us to the role of the commission. As outlined in Rule 5 of the Civil Service Rules, the commission has the authority to extend acting assignments in two main scenarios. When no eligible list exists, the commission can extend a temporary appointment for up to 6 months. When an eligible list does exist, the commission, it limits the temporary appointment to 30 days if there is an eligible list, unless the commission extends it. So these provisions do clearly recognize the commission's role in authorizing extensions under special circumstances, which we believe are present now. So, given this unique situation, the HR staff and myself, we are requesting the following. We're requesting that the commission delegate authority to the Chief Human Resources Officer, acting in her capacity as Chief Examiner, to review and approve any necessary extensions to acting assignments, whether they exceed the 30-day or 6-month period, depending upon the applicable rule, and that this delegated authority remain in place for the full duration of the hiring freeze, including any extensions beyond June 30th, 2026. With the understanding that all acting assignments will continue to go through a rigorous review by the department head, the Human Resources Department, and in some cases, the city manager, to ensure that each acting assignment is warranted, fiscally sound, and consistent with the applicable MOU. We're asking also that there is an understanding that to maintain full transparency, if approved, HR will include a standing monthly report on our agenda summarizing all acting assignments that have been approved or extended under the delegated authority, which will allow the commission to ask any questions that they may have. This request is about creating efficiency during a time of limited staffing and respecting the commission's role in our oversight. We believe that this approach will strike a balance between accountability and operational necessity. So thank you for considering this request. My staff and I are here to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Any questions from my fellow commissioners? Commissioner Reen.
So I don't know if this is a question about has legal counsel weighed in on this, because I think it fundamentally is a legal question in part, because people are assuming these roles. Now, if I ask that, have you consulted legal counsel? Do we waive the attorney-client privilege, which we don't want to do? Is there a way to inquire in that without, I guess I'll direct this to our attorney here tonight.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Reen. Our office, Ms. Varpetian, has considered that this, and I can say this, that this delegation of authority would not violate the rules and would not require rule amendment. So it's within the commission's authority to grant this delegation, is what we've determined.
It does seem to be within the rules by my reading, too. Although in reading the memo in support of the proposed action item, I noted that we have MOUs for the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, our City Employees Association, Glendale Management, but I didn't see an MOU section in the firefighters that refers to temporary positions, and I'm wondering if this is going to be a wrench in the works.
Yes, this acting capacity request is focused on civilian personnel, not sworn peace officers.
Right, but the firefighters, we did at the beginning of the meeting, I'm sorry to interrupt you, at the beginning of the meeting, did we learn that some firefighter positions might be involved in temporary placement?
We talked about ambulance operators, which are not covered under an MOU.
Okay.
And we talked about the emergency, what's the title?
Emergency Services Manager.
Emergency Services Manager, which is a civilian fire personnel, but we've asked to civilianize that role. But we've been granted permission to finalize that recruitment and actually hire a person. So we are not contemplating an acting assignment in that role. Everything else in fire service that is covered by FOBAR or it's sworn, we're not asking for any of that as it relates to this request here. We're talking about civilian positions.
Right, because if it's in the MOU, we're okay, but I think if you start doing a temporary position without the union agreement, then you might have a legal problem, I think.
If it's not negotiated within an MOU to allow an acting assignment, we're not asking for that. We're asking for only MOUs that have negotiated language that speaks to acting assignments. That's what we're talking about. And in the commission's capacity for those MOUs that have that language, we're saying if we need to go beyond a 30-day window, if there's a list, or a 6-month window with no list, might we have your permission to do that and report back to you monthly on if we've made any extensions beyond that period of time? But the MOU that has the acting pay language, that's the starting point. That's negotiated language that we must adhere to.
Right, thank you for that point of clarification. Thank you, Mr.
Ms. Adams, I have a question. When there's no hiring freeze, I mean, I'm aware of acting positions being created all the time. If there's no hiring freeze, I haven't ever had to approve in the almost 2 years I've been on this commission an acting position. So is this rule applicable for acting positions only during a hiring freeze?
So the commission does not approve the acting assignment.
It's the extension.
It is the extension of time. It's only the extension of
I
time.
see.
Acting assignments are approved by the city manager's
Right.
designee, so department heads, and certain extensions are given to him for authority. If we are going through an examination process and we need some additional time in order to establish a list, the city manager can give us additional time.
So that's why the extension is applicable during a freeze, because we don't have the situation you just described.
We will not, more likely than not, we will not be going through processes that will get us to a list upon which to hire, number one, and we, number two, are looking at classifications where we know they're already in the freeze.
Right. So if we do not approve this request, then certain departments might have to wait up to 29 days to get something extended and filled because we need to wait for a hearing.
Right, and, right, because in certain scenarios, the acting assignment can only go 30 days. We meet once a month, and a department head has a need for services, and we cannot work people out of class.
I do
And if-
agree. Yeah, I do
right.
agree. It would be oppressive to have to wait an extra 30 days until we meet here and to approve the extension.
Right.
To me, it's a reasonable request.
Any other questions before I go ahead, please?
Just a quick question. So is this to merely extend existing appointed positions, or would you also be appointing new temporary positions?
Today, I don't have any requests for acting assignments before me. We had one, but the department withdrew it. But we do anticipate during this hiring freeze that we may get this question again. So that's why we want to bring the question to you beforehand in anticipation of a request coming, so we know how to coordinate ourselves. If we were required to wait 30 days, that could have an operational impact to a department. We could ask the chair to call a special meeting, but then we would have to, make sure we have a quorum to conduct a special meeting, to have something on calendar in less than 30 days. So we're just trying to know what we're authorized to do ahead of time because we anticipate other requests may be coming before us.
So if there was a request for a new acting position to be filled, what would be the process to fill it? Would you go through a normal interview process for that? Or Or how would that work?
We take, if there is no established list, then we take the recommendation of the department head, who they believe has the skills, knowledges, and abilities to perform this work for a temporary period of time. Whatever the minimum requirements of the job would normally be, we would hope that the person being selected is very closely aligned with that. No list, we would take the recommendation of the department head. If there is a list, we're going to look to see who's on the list, because we know they've already been examined, they're already on the list, and we would expect to secure someone from that list to perform that work because we know they've already passed that minimum testing process.
So it would be up to the director of the department to determine what that process would be for them to select the acting position?
The department head and the human resources analyst, we always work in collaboration with each other, always.
So, Ms. Adams, if there's a list, then it won't be an acting position. You'll just fill the vacancy from the list
No, we cannot make a permanent appointment during a
because of the
hiring
freeze.
freeze.
Makes
Right.
sense.
Just as a point, it seems like under Section 9C, emergency appointments, this might qualify, in which case you wouldn't need our permission. You could just extend the temporary appointments as long as as the Director of Human Resources you wanted. But you're so kind to come to us and ask us for permission under B.
Right, I mean, one could consider the hiring freeze an emergency, but we want to be transparent as well.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Any other questions?
I did have a follow-up.
Please.
So for the acting position, if somebody gets promoted into an acting position that's above the current position that they're in, would they have a commensurate salary bump, or would they stay at their current salary level and hoping, and then eventually if the hiring freeze is lifted, then they would get a salary bump?
So it's technically not a promotion. It's technically a temporary assignment. And whatever the increase in pay is already negotiated and it's contained in the MOU. So if it's 5% in the MOU, that's what the party would get. Whatever the MOU says in that document is the additional compensation that the person would receive.
Any other questions? So, Ms. Adams, thank you for all the information and the presentation and the thorough explanation. I do think for city operations and for human resources allocation, it is a very reasonable request. But I also ask myself, if we were to agendize these requests on a monthly basis, and if it was presented to the commission, let's say you come to the commission with an appointment in Glendale Water and Power, what are the questions that I would ask in that meeting in order for me to feel comfortable in granting that request? And I'm wondering if I can present the commission and HR and also our city attorney with a set of questions, and whether or not we can document those questions by the directors who seem to have leverage with the HR analysts in making these appointments. And so one of the questions that I came up with is the eligibility of the candidate. Is this person even eligible to do this higher level work? Are they on a list currently? What is that evaluation process? What considerations were given by the director when they decided, hey, I'm gonna go with Ara instead of Bob? Okay. The other question I have is, have all eligible employees who are similarly situated been considered? So Ara and Bob are both stellar performers, right? But Ara gets selected. Because this is, again, just for my background, being appointed to a higher level is coveted because there's higher pay. And it's essentially sort of setting you up, if you do well, to when the position becomes available to get bumped up. So we want to make sure there's like an equitable process in place, right? We want to make sure that everybody's kind of vetted in a certain way. It's not an examination, but at the bare minimum, one of the questions, I know we do this at my work, we look at the person's personnel file. Does the person have any disciplinary record? What do the performance evaluations look like? Am I just appointing my person or a friend that I like. There may be better candidates out there. And what vetting is being done by the director through HR? These are the questions that I would ask if these were normally presented to me. And then the final question, is the candidate currently working out of class? That matters. Because if I am working above my pay grade, I have an out-of-class bonus claim. It creates liability for the department. I think that makes it a little bit easier. Like if that's communicated by the director to the HR analyst. Hey, yeah, this guy's working out of class because we haven't been able to fill this position because we're in a hiring freeze. So I do want to make sure that the city operates, and I do want to make sure we have appropriate human resources allocation throughout the city while we are not, while we are meeting on a monthly basis. But at the same time, I'm also wondering if the city directors who have this discretion, if they can answer these questions, and if it could be documented, if they considered these things, if they reviewed someone's personnel file to ensure there's no disciplinary record, if they employed an equitable process in making that selection for that higher level position, just to ensure that everybody's kind of looked at equally, right? And so I'm wondering if we have the opportunity to create such a questionnaire.
Well, we have the opportunity to add additional questions, but one point of clarification, we have a acting pay request form that is approved by the city that has long been in place and is in use. These additional questions during this hiring freeze city, we have the capability of adding some additional questions, but there's already a substantial amount of justification that must be presented already to city manager's office and to human resources just to get the minimum acting pay approved. So there are checks in place, justifications that we go through. Generally speaking, we're looking at the career progression of a person, and is this next job in their chain of promotability that they would normally follow, and reviewing performance evaluations in the personnel file is part of our established protocol. I hear you loudly and clearly when we're talking about inclusivity and being equitable and fair in our processes, and those things are very important to us, not only during a hiring freeze, but always. And so some of these follow-up questions that you're asking are fairly routine for me when staff comes to me to approve certain things. I want to know what the process was, who the people are. And sometimes I do believe I come to these conversations with a little more curiosity because I've been connected with the city for such a short period of time. I'm not intimately familiar with a lot of people or their employment background or what they are or are not capable of. And so I do ask far more questions than some may be accustomed to for the same reasons that you've described.
Yes, just one follow-up. So part of the checks and balances system that you mentioned, the forms that go to the city manager, even if we're not in a hiring freeze, in situations like this, those requests would still go through the commission, right? Because it would not.
Not to approve.
Not,
Well,
but
Not
the
to approve.
extension does.
Only
The
for
extension.
extensions.
For the extensions.
Right.
So that's part of the process though, right? In order to create the checks and balances system that you just mentioned. And I do agree with you that a lot of it is equity-based questions, but a lot of it is also, like when you look at somebody working out of class already, it's also liability-based questions, right? And so in order for me to have a little bit of comfort, do we know at this time if any of these questions are part of the questionnaire that's being asked?
I don't have the form in front of me, but I would submit to you that the Civil Service Commission has already appointed me as your chief examiner. So I'm charged with examining these types of issues on a regular and routine basis. That is the assignment that the commission has already given me. So if there has not been a formal examination in place, it is my job to heavily scrutinize these requests that come to HR before they even get to the city manager's office. They come through for this vetting process for those reasons. And, you know, there's only two remedies to working out a class. Pay the person or stop. So working out a class is frowned upon in all situations, and we seek to avoid all of those examples. And when they do come to my attention, they are thoroughly reviewed. Working in a smaller city is more manageable than a large neighboring city that has 4,000 employees or more, or 40,000 even. So we have a much better handle within our organization. But, you know, not to be repetitive, the commission has already delegated me to be your chief examiner.
Thank you. And in your examination, Ms. Adams, do you look at someone's personnel file and prior discipline, performance evaluations? Do we ask questions to the director whether other candidates may have also qualified for that appointment?
We ask that. We ask for opportunities to rotate people in acting assignments, to give a broader group an opportunity to rotate in, rather than it being, you know, an assignment that just goes on and on. Maybe it's for a defined 6-month period of time, and then we rotate someone else in to keep the equity around people who will promote eventually in that rotation. We seek all of that.
Thank you, Ms. Adams.
Thank you, Ms. Adams, also for me. It's discomforting because we're basically tossing away all these great civil service rules that are so important and the reason for us to be here. But in thinking about the chair's comments, it occurred to me, so if a temporary position is, if a department head wants to fill a temporary position, then the first thing would be to let people know, right? So how, and it could be anybody in our existing system that might want to apply. Is there going to be some method to notify everybody, I guess, that, hey, there's a temporary position, and let everybody say, I want it?
Is it an application process or a nomination or appointment process?
Well,
It's not an application process.
No, that's
Within
what I
my
thought.
department, if I were to have a HR analyst vacancy, for example, and I see a rising analyst in my office, or plural, rising, plural, a group, then the things that I would consider are, do these people that I'm considering meet the qualification for the exam if I was permitted to give it? If the answer is yes, and I see that they have the skills, knowledges, and abilities, myself, I would prefer a rotation to give everyone who is capable of competing in the future an opportunity to rotate through the acting assignment. Now, in other larger departments where the work could be more specialized, for example, I'm not always in the position to know if a broader group has that narrow specialty. Let's just say in integrated waste operations, for example. So then I would have to lean on the department to say, while the classification title might be Public Works Analyst, which of these have worked in integrated waste and have this special knowledge about managing an integrated waste operation? If there was a list in place, I would go with the people on that list because they've already been examined for that body of knowledge. And if there wasn't a list in place, then I do have to rely on my colleague who is running that group to identify for me who those people are. Depending upon the size of the group, I might suggest put out an email, put out an announcement, if you will, that says, this is what we intend to do, who might be interested. And then, depending upon the level of interest, it gives you another layer to review the applicable employment background to say they have done analysis work in integrated waste, and yes, I should consider these 4 people for this acting role or not. But a process of some type, a documented process of some type is always the preference.
Yes, Ms. Adams, and I have all confidence in our HR unit and in HR units in general, because HR units, the staff is versed at the different parameters, different, rights that they have, and sometimes they'll voice it, and that's great. But it's the other departments,
Right.
right? And so the question is, are they as well versed? Are they being provided recommendations and consultations in that regard to ensure an equitable process? Typically, you wouldn't go down the chain if you have, let's say, a management position and say, hey, guys, we have this vacancy, and if like a clerical position, an entry-level position is not going to be able to do that job or qualify, you don't have to go that far down the chain. You just have to go one level down and just ask those folks, hey, guys, we're going to be appointing someone in the interim while there's a freeze to carry out the function of so-and-so who's retired. Are any of you interested? It makes it easy because one person may not want the responsibility out of the 2 or the 3. It makes it super easy because if that person in an email says, hey, I'm not really okay with, I don't want the responsibility.
And there are a lot of people who say things like
Yes,
that.
we get it. And so that automatically takes 2 people out or 1 person out. And then now you have 2, and now the evaluation process comes into place by that manager. Do they have that HR knowledge base? Are the analysts telling them, pull the file, look at everything, look at their performance, number of years on, seniority, things of that nature. And also, hey, Mr. Director, I also recommend that you put them on rotation.
Right.
And they might turn around and say, well, I have 2 candidates. One of them has a prior discipline. You know what, maybe we don't want to rotate that person. Sure, but at least they evaluated it. And so I think for HR, absolutely, I have confidence that you would rotate those positions if you have them vacant. It's just the other departments, I guess.
Right, and it's a benefit to be here having this discussion because when I am in dialogue at times with other department heads, it's good for them to hear that I'm in concert with what the commission would like to see happen. This is not the chief HRO wanting to get to know. This is the chief examiner wanting to stay consistent with what the commission would like to see happen.
Thank you, Ms. Adams.
Can I make a suggestion? I'm not sure I'm in favor of it yet, but it's an idea, I guess, more than a suggestion, which is that we agendize for our next meeting. I wish the attorney were here. She left at the wrong moment for me, but if we could agendize the nature of the reporting that we're going to get, because the current agenda item has a report, but I'm thinking after listening to the chair's comments, it would be great for us to have a report that covered all of those things, including names. And so maybe it's a close that we're going to have for every meeting going forward. We'll have that report. It'll be closed session so we can get into the real details of these personnel issues, but so we're not totally abdicating what we're doing. We're making sure that everything seems good and the way it's being handled with various departments, and we stay involved. So if we could agenda, I think we would have to agendize it. Maybe we want a lot of discussion, and it gives staff an opportunity to pull all of the chair's comments about what he'd like to hear and make them part of maybe the reporting mandate that we impose.
Well, as I mentioned, as I sit here today, there are no extensions before us. So in 30 days, we would not be at a point where we would be seeking an extension because there are no extensions before us as I sit here today. To create some sort of format to report out in the future, certainly we can bring a suggestion for discussion next month. There will not be any reporting because there's nothing to report out on. But what you would like to see in a future report, we can certainly suggest that formatting if that would be the commission's desire.
Ms. Adams, obviously in making this request, you had some sort of an idea of what type of reporting you would be doing for us. Would that include actual names, as Commissioner Rinn suggested? Is that something typical? Is that what the plan would be? Is that allowed?
You know, anytime there's something new, I would normally present my idea to Ms. Varpetian first, have her weigh in on it, have her weigh on if, you know, what her belief is in terms of what we're going to bring to the commission, and then bring the matter before you. This subject, I did discuss with her. And so what we're talking about today, we did review with Ms. Varpetian already. The formatting of the reporting, we didn't, but we certainly can as soon as she returns from vacation.
I do have utmost trust in the department heads and in you, Ms. Adams, in doing the best possible job, because delegating our powers to you, we need to have that trust. Without it, it's not, it doesn't behoove us to do that. And I really appreciate everyone commenting on their thoughts and requests and concerns to be able to make sure that when we're giving up our authority, that we're doing the right thing. It's not so much, I guess, that we don't trust you all, it's that we need to make sure we're doing the right thing. So I do like the idea of maybe having some sort of an agreed upon report that we would receive, so that everyone feels comfortable every month that that what we would have asked, what we would have wanted to know before approving it has already been asked, so that we're properly delegating our duties.
Yeah, and I just want to piggyback on that. It's you know, we trust the city leaders and Ms. Adams, absolutely, you and the department. I think what we want to do is collaborate versus just delegate. I think in that collaborations, like I said, the questions that I would ask every single occurrence remains the same.
Yeah.
Even if that director was standing in front of me, just to ensure that the city is protected and we have a fair, equitable process that reduces liability for the departments. And hence, if there's like some sort of a checklist, whether it's through the analyst or through the directors, that they can, and I understand that there may be one through the city managers, maybe if that can be shared in the report, so we are aware, maybe some of the things will cross over. Maybe they are not looking at it from an employment perspective for the city manager. Maybe they're looking at it from a more fiscal perspective. Regardless, it would be great if we have the information in front of us that was vetted, and hence it makes it much easier to delegate that authority, because now it's documented. Someone's name's on that piece of paper and it's dated. And then, you know, if in the future somebody approaches me in the public and says, hey, you know, you delegated that authority and I was hoping I would be appointed for that position, at least there's some kind of paper trail of some sort versus just, hey, sorry, guy, I don't know what happened. So that was my concern. I don't know if the commissioners have any other comments.
The only other comment I had was, I do know when we were looking at the different ethnicities, different genders for the city, what I thought was really interesting is some departments have a predominantly higher male versus female ratio. And we were all talking about how certain, you know, certain professions were traditionally known as male-dominated professions, and things are changing, but sometimes they're changing slowly. So I would like to know, for example, I hadn't thought of knowing names in the reports, and I don't know if I specifically need to know names, but I would like to know that if we're looking at a report from a department where you reported there might be 5% females and 95% males, that females have been considered as part of the consideration, and just to keep equity. So I don't know what type of report I'm looking for, but I'm sure you, Ms. Adams, would be asking those questions as well.
Mr. Chair, just a couple quick comments. I think the fundamental responsibility for this commission is to make sure that the hiring practices are fair and equitable. And I think this is kind of an uncomfortable situation because it's a murkier process. So, I agree with the chair with the other comments that I think that whatever we can do to make the process as transparent as possible so that we're informed of the decision, so we see we see how the process is done. I think that would be not only helpful for the commission, but helpful for the residents and for liability issues as well.
Thank you. Any other comments? So Mr. Rena, I think you had the motion to,
Well, my motion
for
would
next
be
week.
to approve the action item as stated by staff, but also to, I guess it's a second motion, to agendize for our next meeting a discussion about the kind of reporting that we would request from HR regarding any temporary appointments that are made. Obviously, if there aren't any appointments, then there's no reporting, but.
No,
so
the
that gives us
extensions of appointments.
Yeah.
Extensions of appointments.
Extensions of appointments, because, right, they're going to receive the initial one without involving this motion today. So that would be my motion.
If we could just do two separate motions, just for clarity. Yes.
That would be great.
Thank
First
you.
motion then is to approve the action item on our agenda tonight.
I'll second it.
thank you. May I please have roll call, Mr. Kwan?
Commissioner McGrabian,
Yes.
Commissioner Giannian,
Yes.
Commissioner Reen,
Yes.
Commissioner Naravian, Chair Hatamian.
Yes. Next motion?
Motion number 2 would be then to agendize for our next meeting as an action item and a discussion item. Can you do both? So that as to the reporting that would be required by HR in the event of an extension of a temporary position.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. May I please get a roll call?
Commissioner McGrabian,
Yes.
Commissioner Giannian,
Yes.
Commissioner Reen,
Yes?
Commissioner Naravian,
Yes.
Chair Hatamian.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. May I please get the next item, Mr. Kwan?
Reports and information, employee job performance evaluations, past due aging report.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, before you is an informational report on performance evaluation and the return status for the City of Glendale's employees. As you can see, the response rate is very good, and there are no evaluations on the second notice list. If the commission has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, this is a note and file item.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Any questions? I see none. Next item, please, Mr. Kwan.
Adjournment.
Thank you, everyone. The meeting is now adjourned.